In recent years, remakes have become an increasing phenomenon in the gaming industry. And while it's not something new at all, in this video I'd like to pose the question: should you play the remake or the original if you've never played the original product? This is going to be an extremely short video, focused more on the conversation around it. I don't want it to be anything crazy. I'm not going to extend the video any longer than it needs to be, but I'll pose the pros and cons of each side and kind of what I think about it and how I've seen it. I've ran this through with one of my friends, and this is kind of what we came up with. So looking at it in the lens of pros being for the remake rather than the original version, assuming you've not played either, and the con being, of course, where you would play the original against the remake. Now, the big thing straight away that I have for a pro is best visuals. More than likely, unless some shit-ass thing happens, I know it's considered a remaster, but the GTA trilogy remasters come up. I know that's a remaster, that's not the point of the video, but the point being a large-scale project can still get fucked up to some degree. Unless something crazy happens, you're going to get better visuals overall. And honestly, this is something that newer gamers have more of an issue with. I personally can play plenty of old games and have no issues whatsoever. But that brings also another touch of modern, and that's the controls. Think like Resident Evil 2 or 3 with the tank controls, and then their shift to more of the modern third-person over-the-shoulder action combat. Now, this, of course, is something that the series slowly went towards as, 4 and 5 and maybe 6. I'm actually not sure. I've avoided 6 at all costs due to what people tell me, but with the kind of aiming how it was in that to officially the third-person action combat. Of course, that's not the only game where that's going to be the instance, but this is a little more up to viewer discretion. Think of Final Fantasy VII versus the remake. Actually, this one pertains to me. I've never played the original or the remake, and I've watched nothing on either, but I know one of the big spoilers that pretty much everyone on the internet knows. But in the original, from what I can understand, it's more of a turn-based action, and while the newer game uses, to some degree, a turn-based strategy, I think it's more action-focused, and from everything I've heard, it's a really good implementation, but the original is a classic for a reason. Now, the next 2 points I want to bring up kind of go hand in hand, and one of these things is better availability on platforms. Where can you go and play Resident Evil 2 right now, the original version? And also, with that being said, how expensive is that going to be to get an original copy, or however you can play the game? Not a lot of availability, especially older games not being available online play a lot of the times to download, but with newer games, Steam, as well as Epic Game Store, Xbox, or PlayStation storefronts are all universalized in a way that you can have your digital purchases there, or, of course, physical in certain instances, but oh well. My point being, the availability will be affected in such a way that supply and demand can keep up with sort of things, although there won't be a supply now that there's a digital storefront, but demand can always be higher and always meet expectations. Now, the final pro I had for waiting for the remake over the original is just this: the potential for the remake to improve what the original game didn't do. And the best thing I can think of as an example of this right now is a voice protagonist for the new Dead Space remake. While, from what I understand, this is another series I have not touched, and honestly, at this point, I don't know why I haven't. I've owned the first 2 games and I picked them up not too long ago. And full disclosure, I plan on playing them before the Dead Space remake. But back to the original point though, supposedly Dead Space 2 and 3 had the protagonist voiced, but Dead Space 1 had a silent protagonist. Now, this probably added to the atmosphere of Dead Space 1, but as a trilogy where 2 and 3 he talks, but the first one he doesn't, it's kind of jarring. So it's kind of nice that they're going back and adding the modern touch to it, something where hindsight is 20/20. But overall, those are the only positive things I had for playing the remake over the original. Now let's get into the cons of waiting for the remake over just playing the original classic. And I said it just with that, there's my first point. This game is a classic. It's proven, and there's no reason to wait for a remake. There's a reason this game is loved and that it's getting a remake. Technically speaking, it may not be the best thing ever, but there's a reason, whether it be the story, gameplay, or even the visuals for the time, that this novel game is very important. And also for the sake of, if you do plan on playing both, it's always nice to play the older game because it's going to be harder to go back if you play the new game first, but I digress. Another big thing that I can, kind of piggyback off of Visceral Games with Dead Space is that the original team could be gone. In the instance of Visceral Games, they were shut down by EA and absorbed or left, however you want to put it, but the team could be gone, therefore the tone of the game could be completely lost. I'm not saying or condemning that's the case for Dead Space, and I don't plan on just harping on Dead Space. Going even back to Resident Evil 1, I actually do have an instance of, it seems that Resident Evil 3, not so much Resident Evil 2, that was pretty faithful. Resident Evil 3 did kind of take a slightly different tone that did piss a lot of fans off. And this can be done through my third point, which is just story changes and censorship overall. Another instance of Resident Evil, actually, is the Oculus VR version for Facebook gaming. There are complete lines of dialogue that are removed from Leon's character that, from everything I understand, I haven't played this version yet, and I hate to keep saying that throughout this video, but it's more of a talking point than anything. This isn't my definitive opinion. I just want to hear what you have to say. I don't think it's a good thing to remove parts of a game during a remaster, port, remake, anything like that, and especially when it added so much charm to the original version of the game. But I haven't played the VR version, so I can't say for sure how much this impacts things, but everything I've heard really does shallow Leon's character. And the final point I did want to touch on, and this isn't always, the fault of the remake itself, could have the best intentions in mind, but recasts. And this can also lead into the tone of the game as well, but I don't know. In the case of Dead Space, thankfully they are getting the original voice actor back to voice the protagonist. However, let me talk about just the first game to a sequel for a second. The Evil Within 1 to The Evil Within 2. The voice actor change, if you can play both games pretty close to one another, is very apparent, and even that's jarring. Let alone a remake where it's meant to be the same character in the same situation, potentially giving off a completely different performance and emotional range. Ending out this video, I'd kind of like to give my opinion on this. Personally, it really is a case-to-case basis on which I'd prefer to play. I've already said that I'm going to be playing Dead Space 1 and 2 rather soon, probably before the remake comes out. Now, I will say I never played Resident Evil 3, the original, before playing the remake. And on the case of Final Fantasy VII, one that I haven't touched either versions of, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet. Neither has called to me particularly a lot, but I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is playing the original version before hopping into the remake. And that is it for today's video. My name is Falling Hurts. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think down below. And yeah, subscribe if you want to. Bye.